There are so many different views and philosophies of education. I actually have a very vivid memory of one of my professors asking us to come up with a unique or a new analogy for teacher and student because there's some really famous ones in educational philosophy like the potter and the clay or the coach and the athlete, right? What is trying to determine what our view of education is would be a philosophy that we share about it in that analogy. One interesting perspective was offered by Joyce Yang, a former classroom teacher and contributor to newsdecoder.com, a global education news service for young people. She wants us to imagine the world as a giant puzzle, and each one of us holds a piece of it. Our job as educators would be to help our kids see where their piece fits. And Joyce took her role as a history teacher in the direction of practicing global citizenship education, or what some educators have called GCE, because Lord knows educators don't have enough acronyms.
We don't have enough acronyms. Definitely need more. Glad that we have people stepping up to fill in that
Bring
gap.
in some more, right? Global citizenship education was aiming to give students more than just a rundown of historical events. She strived to arm them with the ability to appreciate diverse perspectives, to understand the complexity of global events, and to empathize with people across the planet. What does global citizenship education look like in action? It's about painting a fuller picture of history, reminding students that history is written by the victors, and then digging deeper. It's about exploring untold stories, the differing impacts of colonialism, and how perhaps a factory worker in Massachusetts during the Industrial Revolution had more in common with his counterpart in England than with his wealthy neighbors. And it doesn't stop at history. Global citizenship education permeates through teaching critical thinking, conflict resolution, and intercultural understandings. It's about preparing our students not just to live in our world, but to actively contribute to making it better. And isn't that what we aspire to do as educators? To ignite that spark of curiosity, to encourage empathy, and to foster a sense of global community? As educators, we're constantly searching for ways to inspire our students to be more active global citizens, to find those universal values that connect us all, and to understand the importance of diverse perspectives. Coming from that, you know, thinking, global citizenship education wouldn't just be one more thing that we want to add to to the curriculum or one more thing to do, but it would be to use as a way to open our students' eyes to the world and their place in it. I am a big fan of global learning and global learning initiatives. Anybody who knows me or what I do, it is a huge part of what I believe in and my philosophy on education. And I think it's really interesting in the way that this was explaining it. And I'm going to share several resources. There's a link that I'm going to drop in from UNESCO that helps us as educators. But there are so many different directions that people take global learning initiatives and global citizenship education. And I always think it's interesting when people say things about like, well, I think this is a cool idea, but we don't have money to send our kids across the world, right? And it's so much more than physically being in another part of the world. It's about understanding our place in the world.
Without a doubt. And certainly, I would say that global travel is neither a necessary nor a sufficient condition to
Although an
making.
excellent
Yeah,
opportunity
no.
if
Well,
it
if
can
anybody's
happen.
offering, yeah, well, to making global citizens through the education process,
Correct.
right? It's more of a state of mind because like you could certainly send people to the other side of the world and not necessarily make them any more worldly. And
Mhm.
as you also noted, Sarah, this kind of education isn't just about adding one more thing to the curriculum, but really is from how you're describing it, completely, overhauling the curriculum and making sure that the all of your curriculum across all the different subject areas is aware of the global context that we're teaching students in. And so I think that's really, really important. And to me, I think global citizenship education, it is always a great way to make sure that we have a great answer to the question that students always ask of when am I going to use this?
Yeah.
Because if
What's the point of this?
Right. If the things we're always teaching are always introducing the global context of why these things matter and the different populations affected, and always inviting students to be critical about the things that they're learning and why these things are in the curriculum, we're inherently showing students how they can use this material.
So I think, especially when we're talking about teacher education training and working with new teachers, I will admit I sometimes, especially I can think of maybe in my master's program when I was already in the classroom as a teacher, I would sometimes get frustrated when we had to do a lot of theory work, right? And talk about philosophies of education and theory work because I really craved more practical things that I could do with my students, and I would say, well, Vygotsky, great. I'm so happy for Vygotsky, but what does it have to do with what is happening in my classroom today, right? What is it that is going to help me do what I need to do with my students? And I think that in the same way that our students want to care or need to have a reason why they're doing something, I think the philosophies and the theory behind this global education, global citizenship education rather, is something that is not only rooted in theory and rooted in understanding the philosophy behind it, but is a practical way to help your students. And I think there's something really special in that because as administrators or as school leaders, we should care what our teachers' philosophy of education is, right? We should care that we're helping them to build an identity as an educator. But sometimes when you're in the weeds and when you're really just dealing with maybe a student who's having trouble, or you have 7 different prep periods and you're struggling, it kind of seems like, why should I care about that? And I think that it's helpful for us as school leaders to help our teachers remember what they're doing makes a difference.
The thing I keep coming back to on this is implementation and how
Mhm.
you actually make this happen in classrooms. Just because I imagine if I looked at just like a bunch of different mission statements of a lot of schools, a lot of them probably say things like global citizenship and making sure
My
that
school's
students,
included.
yeah, like it's a great thing to say in a mission statement. Like what mission statement is going to say we don't want our kids to be
We
global
don't want that.
citizens?
We don't want
But
empathy.
and so it's easy to say and it's cool branding, but how do we actually make take concrete steps to make sure that our teachers have the resources and have the ability to fully integrate this into a curriculum and make sure that it's not just something we're paying lip service to, but actually integrating it into lessons and making it a complete part of the education experience?
Well, I think if you are a school leader and this is something that you want to take seriously, you obviously need to dedicate time. And time is the most, right? The most expensive resource that we have. But if you are serious about it, then I think doing some training and some time around it is really going to be critical because helping your teachers to develop that curiosity and way of thinking is going to be really beneficial in seeing this play out. It also, I think, in a way, time is a lot cheaper than some of the other programs that we get thrown a lot, right? So it's like, okay, buy this program and immediately your kids are going to be global citizenship, approved. You're going to get that checkbox. But it's more about a philosophy and a way of thinking and a way of implementing than it is about checking boxes, right? And so having our students think about real problems. And I think sometimes it can be used in alignment with a lot of things that we've talked about on the show before, right? We've talked about things like project or problem based learning. We've talked about like citizenship science and things like that, where students are encouraged to get out of the physical classroom and be a part of actual research that's happening in the world. These are the kinds of things that we want to get our students more engaged in and more experiential opportunities versus looking at things in a vacuum because our lives don't happen in a textbook, right? They happen in real time. They have real consequences. I was actually recently in a really great um session, a really great professional development session with some new educators, and they were asking some of us that were a little bit more experienced that what are some classroom management staples or some go-to's that you use. And something that comes to me a lot is natural consequences, talking about natural consequences with students, like, so what doesn't happen if you don't follow the rules? Honestly, a lot of times nothing, and nothing will happen if you don't raise your hand before speaking, right? Which is something we talk about. But what are some natural consequences of interrupting people? they're not going to like you. They're not going to want to talk to you, right? They're going to see you as a person who's an interrupter. And there are, you know, ugh, why can we never get through this? Because so and so is always talking. Can we just talk about this without so and so getting in the way? We all know that person at work. I've been that person at work who is an interrupter and can be indelicate and rude. And so let's help our kids understand like, this makes you kind of a jerk. And it's not polite to interrupt people. And it's not just about raise your hand before you want to be spoken to. It's about existing and communicating in a way where we can do what we want to do. We want to accomplish these goals. Let's work together to get there.
That's a great perspective. And, I'm glad that you brought up that piece about the parallels between this and citizen science. It was one of the first things
Yeah.
that I thought of when you brought up this story. Very, very cool.